Fellow Canadians, my name is Alex Ihama, the Executive Director for the Canadian Congress on Inclusive Diversity and Workplace Equity. I'm recording this video on Sunday, June 6th, 2021, which is just about a week after the traumatic discovery of the remains of 215 children, some as young as 3 years old, on the grounds of a residential school in Kamloops, BC, right here in Canada. I'm recording this video not to demonstrate any anger or animosity towards the European colonists or any other ethnic or cultural group, but to leverage this unfortunate news to increase the awareness of the pains, the plights, and the potentials of the indigenous people of this nation. We acknowledge that we are situated on the traditional land of the Anishnaabeg people. The Anishnaabeg people include the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Pottawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We are dedicated here at the Congress to honoring the indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect for all First Nations, Métis and Inuit people. When I first heard the news, like you, I was taken aback, completely shocked, bewildered, and even angry and furious. I could not believe it and decided to educate myself thoroughly about the evil system of the residential schools before I finally came to terms with it. For those who are unaware, the residential school system was created years ago right here in Canada, where children of the indigenous people were literally yanked out of their families with the intention to kill, in quote, kill the Indians in them, with the intention to make them subject to the European culture that has been forced upon them. And research indicates that as far as 6,000 children never returned back to their families. And yes, the indigenous people have been saying this for far too long. They have been crying out to thousands of missing kids. Yes, we know the indigenous people have and continue to be treated unfairly and unjustly in a country that was forcibly formed on indigenous grounds. Basic history tells us that they, the indigenous people, were dealt with viciously and almost wiped out completely. To what extent? The history books never told us that. But of course, most of the history books were written or edited by the Europeans to portray themselves as heroes, while portraying other people as villains. But truth be told, if this were the remains of 215 white kids found in the indigenous territory, although they own the whole land of Canada, helicopters will be circling that scene for days. Special dogs will be brought in to sniff the grounds of all the residential schools. Special forces will be on ground to protect the crime scene from contamination. The offices of the Catholic Church, who, by the way, have been silent since the discovery, will be raided by the CSIS in the middle of the night. Even the FBI will offer their help with high-level forensic investigations. Other economically strong nations will offer monetary support to pay for further searches and investigation. This unfortunate discovery will be breaking news on every news channel across the nations until arrests are being made. What is more, hate crimes against the indigenous people will tremendously increase. Living witnesses will be interrogated and offered special protection and services. The International Criminal Court will be involved, will volunteer their involvement even without being asked. And I will tell you, if these were 215 little white kids, God forbid, were found on indigenous grounds, sanctions will be placed on the indigenous people. Sanctions will include no access to water, no roads, and other basic amenities, which, by the way, they still don't have. If, hypothetically, if we can even take this further, because if that were the case, it will not end at all. In fact, the system that caused that to happen will take this even further to the next generation by updating history books to teach further generations how savage the indigenous people are, restricting the rights of indigenous people and access to other white people. If hypothetically 215 little white kids, God forbid, were found on indigenous ground, books will be updated to teach other white kids to refrain from contact with indigenous people. Monuments will be erected across the country to remind everyone of the savage acts. But in this case, unfortunately, we read a week later that provinces are looking for money to search the grounds of other residential schools. We read that the Catholic Church remains silent a week later. We read that the place of this discovery is not even treated as a crime scene. Unfortunately, we read that no one is taking responsibility for this. Blames are being shifted from one entity to the other when they are all guilty of what transpired. No special investigation is in process. The media mentions it here and there. In fact, if this discovery, this unfortunate discovery, was in an African nation, the nations who arrogantly call themselves G7 or G8 will viciously pounce on that nation, that African nation, destroy it to the ground like it was done in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Rwanda, in Afghanistan, and then remove the president of the nation. This is a hypothetical situation versus the unfortunate reality. My fellow Canadians, if you're one of those who are still trying to understand what racism and discrimination looks like, now you do. If you're one of those who's hiding behind the walls of white privilege and unconscious bias, I hope this discovery may have softened your heart. Even if you're one of those who, like the Premier of Quebec, who arrogantly, ignorantly, and nonchalantly dismisses the concept of racism, please wake up from your spiritual slumber. Please wake up. The spirits of the children are crying to us today to wake up to the reality of our time. Your history books in schools are not accurate. They omitted what was discovered. Your government was built upon untold lies of genocide. Yes, your judicial system is designed to find minoritized people guilty before proving innocent. We have the data for all this. The law enforcement was created to enforce laws unfairly, unjustly, and even fatally when the matter concerns Black people and indigenous people. Even the media is consciously biased. Workplaces have been so for fast too long, with some only recognizing the gravity of it after the modern day lynching of George Floyd. Therefore, my fellow Canadians, if there was ever a time to come together as a people and mourn the death of thousands of children in the residential schools across Canada, it is now. If there was ever a time to recognize the pains and the plights and potential of Indigenous people, it is now. I refuse to accept that as Canadians and human beings, we cannot come together in love. I refuse to accept that as Canadians and human beings, we cannot move from just tolerating one another to celebrating each other. I refuse to accept that organizations that have made billions, if not trillions of dollars from the resources of the second largest nation on the planet, Canada, cannot come together to give back to the original owners of the land. Fellow Canadians, I know you know the right thing to do. But unfortunately, some are still uncomfortable with speaking up against social injustice, against racism, against discrimination, and even against hate. Hate against the Asians, hate against the Blacks, hate against the Indigenous people, against the Jewish, against other ethnic groups, hate. Some are still uncomfortable with speaking up against hate. So I leave you with a word from Edmund Burke, a quotation from Edmund Burke. It says, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." If we are good, therefore, it is time to rise up to the occasion and join us at indigenousLivesMatters.ca and go ahead and share this video to create more awareness. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless the Indigenous people of this fine nation of Canada. God bless us, the settlers, people who have come to settle in this nation, even without the permission of the Indigenous people. God bless you. See you at IndigenousLivesMatters.ca. God bless you.